All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with our work session, so we make sure we give ourselves plenty of time to discuss the agenda item for the evening. So we will start with roll call.
Benson.
Here.
Brunig.
Here.
Johnson.
Present.
Minor.
Here.
Schramm.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Mayor Moser.
Here.
City Manager Leon.
Here.
City Attorney Denherter.
Here.
Interim Finance Officer Yardley.
Here. All right. As you know, starting here at 6 p.m. tonight is our work session. But before we get to our topic of the evening, is there anybody here from the public that wants to address the commission on something not on the work session agenda tonight? All right, seeing no movement, then we will move on to our work session for the evening. I'll turn it over to City Manager Leon. We will be discussing video lottery licensing tonight with possibly some direction if requested from the commission once we discuss. So I will turn it over to City Manager Leon to kind of set up or tee us up for our discussion, and then I know Ross and Lisa are going to be chiming in as well.
Yes, thank you. So we received a request from a citizen about the removal or increase of the cap on video lottery. So many of you know that video lottery licenses are something that cities can issue. We have currently a cap of 39, and all 39 are in use. That's the number of licenses. Ross and Lisa have done some background work on what the background is legally, what you can do, and also have some information about the number of machines, what some other communities are doing, etc. In your work session folder in SharePoint, you have some exhibits as well that kind of go through the history and when it's changed, when the numbers of licenses have changed, so you can refer to those as well. Ross and Lisa are going to give you a quick overview of the memo and what we're looking at here, and then you all can discuss. My only suggestion to the commission on this is if you do decide to give direction, you might want to think about timing of that, because I'm sure there'll be a lot more interest in discussing this. You may want to give it a little more time than just a one meeting time frame, but that would be your purview. So Mayor, I'll let Ross and Lisa talk to you a little bit about video lottery and what the law allows.
Would you like me to kick it off here? All right. So the memo that I prepared for all of you just breaks down the history of video lottery, both in the state and as it rolled into Yankton. So essentially, as City Manager Leon indicated, this was done at the request of a local citizen. There's no staff opinion or direction here. It's just the historical background. So just by way of history, the state of South Dakota amended its constitution to permit a lottery in 1986. And in 1989, the legislature expanded the definition of lottery and authorized video lottery at that time. That's where the cap of 10 machines per license was rolled out. However, when it was first introduced, cities could not regulate the industry. In 1992, there was some initial legislation that authorized the fee per machine set at a cap of no more than $50 per license per location. So essentially, if you had 10 machines, the city could adopt a fee structure per machine at $50 per machine, and Yankton did that. So in 1992, we passed Ordinance 662, setting a fee of $50 per machine. That is still the cap to this day, and that is, in fact, the fee that Yankton charges. In 1994, the legislature adopted SDCL 42-7A-64, which allowed municipalities to consider the number of establishments currently licensed for video lottery when deciding whether to approve the issuance of a wine, cider, or malt beverage license. So that was the authorization to effectively set a limit. But it is limited to wine, cider, or malt beverage licenses. It does not impact the city's ability to address liquor licenses. So that's worthy of note. We'll come back to that. In January of 1998, the City Commission first debated how and whether to limit video lottery, but it was part of a discussion on the limitation of alcohol licenses generally. So at that time, there was not a consensus specifically on what should be regulated, but there was apparently enough of a drive to regulate it somehow that at the time, staff prepared 5 different versions of ordinances for the city to consider. And they were essentially, if you look in your packet, I believe it's identified as attachment 2. But it had all of the options there for consideration. Ultimately, the commission did end up voting upon an option that attempted to limit the number of on-off sale malt beverage license, on-sale wine licenses, and off-sale malt beverage licenses, which if approved would have been a de facto cap because there would be a limit on the number of malt beverage licenses. But that ordinance was in fact rejected. So no limit was imposed at that time. In May of 1998, so that was in January, so about 5 months later, the commission took up the debate again, but at that time, the debate was specifically on video lottery. And at the time, the commission ultimately voted to approve a revised version of what had been proposed as the second ordinance option in January, which was a different variation, and it limited the number of video lottery licenses to 1 license for every 350 citizens as determined by the last official census. And at that time, the limit imposed a cap of 39 licenses. The population-based framework was again reviewed by this commission in 1999. And there was some dispute as to what should be done. So at that point, the commission couldn't decide what they wanted to do, but they knew they wanted to do something. So they kind of played a game of chicken. They passed an ordinance that says we're going to keep what we got, but it effectively sunsets in 1 year. So if it was allowed to sunset without the commission taking it up again, the net effect would have been the limit would have gone away. So the following year, in May of 2000, the commission did resume the debate, and at that time, they adopted ordinance, what is now section 3-3, that simply capped the number of licenses at 39, and they did away with the population-based formula. So that is the system that we have maintained since the year 2000. So that's just kind of a rough history, and I was mistakenly under the impression when I drafted this that the commission has not resumed the discussion since then, but I was informed, in fact, earlier today, that in 2009, the commission did take up the debate again, and at that time, the commission decided they did not want to propose any changes, so there was no resolution that was presented for this commission's consideration. So there was no historical data that allowed me to have access to that and share that with you in the memo. But based on what we have in place, 39 licenses are actively issued and operational in the city right now. There are no dormant video lottery license based on the records we have available. Based on the information that we hold in our office, I believe Lisa can tell you the total number of machines that are playable in town at this point in time. Go ahead.
Yes, today we have 343 machines, and that equates to $17,150.
Yep, so that's the amount of revenue the city makes each year renewing those licenses with the $50 per machine. Since 2000, Yankton's population has grown by 2,000 people. That doesn't have an impact on the licensure because, or the number of licenses available, because in 2000 they did away with the population limit, but there are 2,000 more people in Yankton if you find that to be relevant. At the time the cap was imposed, the city took a waiting list, and that waiting list has been held ever since. There are 15 different people or businesses that remain on that waiting list. However, as stale as that list is, staff is not certain how many of those people are still interested in having licenses. I believe some of those businesses might not be valid businesses anymore. The ownership may have changed. So that's very, very stale at this point. One thing I think that's really important for you guys to be mindful of, and I'm not sure it should govern your decision. You guys will get to decide for yourself what's appropriate for the community, but for better or worse, there is a value placed on the existing licenses that are out there that have been actually tendered by people in the community to acquire licenses from other people in the community. I would say we ought to do a little bit of sharing of the news if this commission is interested in seriously exploring when it comes before the commission on an agenda item or as an agenda item. We're going to really want to make sure that the people who have the licenses are aware that this is being discussed because I'm fairly certain they will have opinions whether to increase and how. Just food for thought. Sure.
Can you turn on your microphone, Commissioner?
343 machines, but how many actual, I know some establishments have 20, some have 50 machines.
Sure.
How many actual establishments do we have with machines?
Lisa, I think, has that statistical information, but she may be required to count.
What is your definition of an establishment? In one
Well, like a
location?
bowling alley, do one establishment.
Okay.
I think they must have 60 machines.
I think it's 50 or close to it. So just so you guys understand how that works too, one establishment can have more than one video lottery establishment inside it. So each one has to be its own confined space that can have up to 10 machines. So the bowling alley is a good example where we have quite a few machines consolidated. There's also another one, I believe, in the Morgan Square area that has four or five licenses. I believe it's 5, Val? Okay, 5 licenses in that location. And there are some places that only have 1 or 2 and don't have the total number of machines too. So if you look at our statistical data, some locations maybe only have 4 machines and are paying an equivalent fee, even though they can have legally up to 10. So food for thought. There has been a trend toward consolidating licenses into single facilities to create more of a casino environment instead of having, one room on the side of a gas station or something like that. That's been more of a recent trend. I don't know if that will continue, but that's currently where things sit. When you're looking at the market value as it stands now, from my anecdotal experience helping people as through our law office, just a private transactional office, it appears that the market rate for a malt beverage license with a video lottery endorsement runs around $150,000. The most recent liquor license sale that had video lottery endorsements on that was I believe, around the $350,000 range. And that, of course, is a combination of the video lottery and the ability to sell on-sale liquor that pushes that one considerably higher, but the video lottery value is baked into that number.
Looking at our addresses, we're about 28 locations, give or take. And just to follow up on what Ross just mentioned, in the past year, we've had 6 transfers alone involving alcohol licenses attached with video lottery.
There is a fairly active marketplace for these, and a little, I don't know if you guys have noticed the level of detail. The information you guys get when the licenses come through really isn't a lot, because what we're seeing is the transfer of the underlying alcohol license. There are a finite number of on-sale liquor licenses, for instance. So those truly could be a sale of, a bar or things of that nature. But if you're ever seeing a transfer of a malt beverage license, those types of licenses aren't capped. So you can draw the logical conclusion, really what you're seeing is the market transfer of a video lottery license that is tethered to that underlying malt beverage license. So just food for thought. It makes it easier for you to spot these as they transfer. It is a fairly active marketplace.
And on those transfers, the city does get $75 fee for each transfer. The state gets their own $75 as well.
We do not get any part of the $150,000, though. No.
I've got a quick question. Do we know how many of those lotto licenses are being leased to entities?
I don't think there's any paper trail at City Hall or at the state level that would identify that. It'd just be private contracts between the individuals involved.
Usually when they fill out their video lottery application with the city, they do have to write down the correlating alcohol license number. And this past week, I did go through each video lottery application and the corresponding liquor license number, and there was very little discrepancies as far as leasing. I did not see a whole lot of that.
Well, I have heard from some folks in the community that have lotto machines that they are leasing those machines, and they're leasing from an entity that no longer lives in the community.
Okay, so what we're actually describing here, it looks and feels like leasing, but it functions a little bit different, but it's important to understand, and there's actually, not to be confused, there's usually a leasing agent that provides machines, and the machines themselves are often, I would say usually, leased by an outside supplier, but that's not the lease you're referring to. So what we identify as a lease is effectively a legal transfer of the license to another party to have in their establishment, but based on a contractual arrangement, it comes with an obligation to share revenue because it wasn't purchased on the open market. And when that contractual relationship has run its course or terminates, there is a retransfer back to its original owner. So it feels like it's leased, but on the books, it's truly a legal transfer. There's just a contractual mechanism to unwind it or undo it.
Of those, do we know how many of those there are inside the community? Because I know of at least a couple. I didn't know the terminology of it, but it's basically somebody owns the lotto license, and then it's in another establishment. It's a revenue share.
Correct. Yeah, and basically the agreements that apply would basically be revenue sharing agreements or license transfer agreements that don't go to City Hall. They're not part of it's basically a private contract between those parties. So that's when I was describing this arrangement, at City Hall, we don't necessarily have those documents. They're not a public record. They're just a private contract between the parties involved. So that's hard to tell. I know of a handful myself. I just don't know how many of them out there on the market are like that.
I know from conversations with some folks that, like, that is their only option, because they can't get a hold of a license. They have video lottery at their establishment, but the only way that they can have that is through some agreement with someone who owns this license, owns this, the paperwork for it, and being that it's capped at 39, it's, there is no way for them to sell it unless someone, or to buy it unless someone is actually willing to sell it, and it doesn't seem like anyone's willing to sell them. They're just willing to enter into a contract of a revenue share.
Which technically wouldn't that be a lease?
Well, yes, the transaction I described, yeah.
Okay.
There, I know actually, as it stands now, there's a couple that are available. It's just, is the marketplace willing to pay what the people are asking, willing buyer, willing seller? If you can't buy, there's this contractual arrangement that you can use that is another option. I'm not giving any judgment one way or the other as to which is better or should be the case. It's just what the current marketplace allows for.
And I apologize if this was brought up or answered before I got here. So does having this lotto license in any way affect getting the on-sale or off-sale licenses at all?
Technically unrelated. Yeah, there is a cap on some of our licenses, and if you want a on-sale liquor, for instance, the only way to get one is to acquire it on the private market.
Okay.
But malt beverage, as long as you're in the proper zoning and you meet all of the state requirements, and you can just get a malt beverage license. You pay the fee, and I hope that answers your question.
It is. Thank you.
Do we have any idea how other communities in the state are handling their video lottery licenses?
So I went around asking other first-class municipalities and their finance departments, and about a third don't even have a cap. That includes Vermilion, Spearfish, Pier, and Huron. Brookings has a cap of 30. Aberdeen has a cap of 35. Watertown has a cap of 41. And Mitchell has a cap of around 24. So to compare number of machines, because we mentioned Yankton has 343 machines. Vermilion has around 80 machines. I didn't get an exact number. Spearfish has 117. Brookings has 334. Aberdeen has 439. Watertown has 364. Mitchell has 285. Pier has 280, and Huron, they don't keep track of their video lottery licenses. They're the only city that doesn't have that $50 fee. Everyone else does. But the state records Huron as having 30 video lottery licenses, so they could have up to 300 machines.
And so with those caps, are those static caps, or are they population-based?
I'm not quite sure exactly on a lot of those. I know some of them, like Watertown, they only have 37 recorded with the state lottery, but talking with their finance officer, 4 are inactive. So I don't know if they have a lot of the need. I can't quite say. As far as if it's population-based or not, I did not get that information.
One thing to just chew on, I don't know if it has a bearing for you guys or not, but I was kind of pondering the different aspects of this to give you as much information as I could. We think about things in terms of leakage at the city level. I guess there's something I'm chewing on. If we create more licenses, are we creating more users? Are we stirring existing users? And what does that mean for existing license holders? Maybe it doesn't matter, but something to think about. What does that mean for the local marketplace?
Out of, excuse me, out of those 39 licenses, how many are held by are they held by fewer entities? You said the locations, but how many are held by different entities
There are 20 owners
for the 39?
out of the 39.
Okay, thank you. You know, one dilemma I'm just trying to wrap my head around is, by in essence, the city, by capping, has created a marketplace for this, and should we remove that cap or extend that cap, we're impacting a marketplace we set and causing some financial insecurity for those that already invested in that marketplace. So I have a hard time understanding why we would do that, but on the flip side, you know, there's some arguments out there of why, you know, certain groups would want more, and, you know, the lease situation they're in is not necessarily ideal for their business model, but is that our job to fix, or is that our job to keep the market stable? In essence, you know, I don't, that's what I'm debating right now in my head, is how do we handle that situation?
I've been trying to debate that same topic, but also trying to look at things from the point of view that we have increased in population by 2,000 people, and we've kept it at a cap of 39. And moving forward, you know, population, we all hope that our population continues to grow. I worry that, you know, we have created somewhat of a false economy, right? I mean, this, by having a cap at 39. I worry that we drive that market up by not allowing any additional additional licenses. You know, it was 39, 2,000 people ago. You know, it might be time to look at, you know, can you add a couple of licenses for demand, but not open it up completely. But then, of course, then that begs, how do you go about that? How do you, you know, I don't have that perfect answer for that. I'm just, you know, looking at everything and trying to come up with some type of a solution that seems to have some equalness to it, if we can.
So if we were to expand the number of licenses, what is the process for that? Is it a lottery?
First, it would be an ordinance change, because we have a cap set by law at this point. So we would need to change that. I think you guys have some options as far as if you were to increase the limits, you know, yet retain a cap, how you would decide who gets those. I mean, it goes back to the same discussion we just had with the additional retail off-sale license. I think it does potentially give you an opportunity as a city to put those on the auction block, if you will. At least you get one opportunity for the city to make some money. But, you know, that's only if you guys decide that's what you want to do. And of course, then it goes back to the fairness issue for people who believe it's cost prohibitive to buy those on the open market right now. You haven't done anything to address that. You know, you've made an auction and the city's going to generate some revenue, but it's still going to be a capped market. So just food for thought. You know, this is a really tough discussion. I don't envy you the decision.
And so current license holders, if we were to expand the number of licenses, they feel like some of the value of their license has been taken away, do they have any legal recourse potentially?
I do not believe so, but it won't make their feelings less unhappy. So food for thought.
I would assume at that time, if that was something for consideration, obviously a published agenda, they could come to a commission meeting and express their concern. That would be about their only recourse, correct?
Correct. They would have rights of referendum and stuff too. I mean, they could put it to the public vote, or, it's any ordinance is something that can be referred. And, don't forget the subject matter of what we're talking about. This could also drum up the debates from the early 2000s about, the propriety of video lottery generally. So just keep that in the back of your pocket too.
Does the state provide us with any idea of how much video lottery revenue they're getting from specifically Yankton? Do we know of any trends in video lottery usage?
We're not given that information. We could look into it, though, and get back to you if we find anything.
State used to provide that information, State Lottery Association. It's pretty static for a long time, but I haven't checked it in many years.
Is there one entity or company that seems to hold most of the licenses here in Yankton?
I'm probably guessing, but I think there's 2 locations that both have 5. And I think that's the cap. One is the bowling alley location, the Pinups Casino. The other is the South Point in the Morgan Square area.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think there's some others that maybe have a couple. Does that sound right, Lisa?
That's correct. The person who owns the most owns 7 licenses.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, that person also has 2 in a different location. So that one gentleman has 7.
2 different establishments here in Yankton, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the bowling alley and one other one.
And
Yeah.
another one, okay.
Just for some perspective, in 2009, when this came up, some of the issues, I don't remember, there are some other people in the audience who were here for that discussion, so maybe they have memories of it too, but it was mostly current license holders that showed up and had opinions to share with the commission. Of course, there were arguments about taking value away from the current license holders. There were concerns about having too many licenses and essentially having a casino alley somewhere in Yankton, similar to what you might see in Sioux Falls, for example. So yeah, those were a couple of the bigger arguments that I recall from that discussion. Anyone remember anything differently?
Do we have any, can they be anywhere? That just makes me think of something. Is there anything written that says where video lottery machines can be located? Is there anything in any of our?
Only restrictions in like the space they inhabit. So they have to be kind of encapsulated in in an area that confines them to 10 machines. But in theory, it's just got to be a place that's capable of having an alcohol license.
And with that, is that restricted? Are there areas, we have restrictions on zoning, right? Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of. There is zoning for that. Okay.
The rules get really strict if they have more than one, because they got to encapsulate each 10 machines. So if you, for instance, if you were to go to South Point or to the bowling alley, you would see that they have like pods of machines. So you can go from machine room to machine room in order to stay in keeping with the statutes.
I guess one other argument that came up in 2009 during that discussion was the idea that a lot of small businesses have these licenses, they depend on that revenue, so taking that away from them could lead to small business closures in some cases.
And I guess I can understand that. I can also see where if you have a cap that there's the discussion of you're taking value away, but by not increasing, you're inflating. It's both. So I think that's just as a counterpoint. I think it's a valid one like I said, I don't know where I fall on this. This is just, it's a discussion right now. But I do see that, if you don't have any way of increasing incrementally, you're just inflating the value of the ones that are existing, and it's just going to cause those to become more and more valuable because it's a finite resource.
Mayor,
Yes, Commissioner Weber.
I was on the commission from 1994 to 2000, and I remember some of these discussions that we had a long time ago. And it's always been kind of a tricky subject for me. So I just want to say that I'd really like to hear from the community. But as a mental health provider, I have seen some really sad stories because of the addiction that comes from video lottery, and so I've got mixed feelings about it. So I hope that we can open this up to a community discussion so we can have a lot of different opinions about it.
Thank you for that. Was there anything else to add there? Just want to make sure. It's always hard online. I don't want to cut you off.
Thank you. No, that's it.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Miller.
Mayor, has there been a lot of public outcry about the cap? I mean, is that how we got here tonight to a work session? Well, I'm just trying to get my feelers on if one person got us here, or if it's a larger problem.
I can have others answer that probably for the city, because they would hear probably more of the folks asking. To my knowledge, tonight's discussion is because of one individual that went to the city and has asked us to look into it and follow up on if there is any desire to increase that by the commission in the public. But I would probably ask one of the city staff to chime in here.
I have not, Commissioner Villanueva, ever had any other request. I don't know, Al, if, I suppose maybe you were here from some of the previous discussions, but since I've been here.
Al's been here since the dinosaurs roamed.
Yeah, for what it's worth, just recently, we've had at least one other citizen, and that was driven more by the off-sale that you just authorized, because that person wanted to know if that allowed video lottery, and off-sale does not. It takes an on-sale license, either liquor and/or wine, malt beverage, what was the third one again? Cider, yeah. And again, we have a waiting list, but it is quite stale, really. I mean, I can't guarantee you that of the 15, 5 of them are still interested. All I know is that we keep that list in case you ever change your mind and nor the state ever changes how they authorize and stuff, so.
Thanks, Al. And that's a good point. You just mentioned that there's a waiting list, and I think we have to, so are we going to honor, is it going to be that first come, first, the list is the list? Or like we said, if we decide to go forward, are we going to open it up to some type of bidding process, or just wondering that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that would be something the commission would have to decide. And another discussion would have to be, do we go back to those on the waiting list? Because they potentially have been on there for a while, and start with them. And then if all of them say no, then we go on to a bid process, or what that looks like. But obviously, that would, to my knowledge, I'm guessing, would have to be set up if the commission would decide to increase or remove the cap, then it would have to be determined on how that would look, I would guess, right, Ross?
Yeah, and you're going to see how that process might work here soon, because what was it, a meeting or two ago, you guys set the fee structure for the the new off-sale packaged liquor, which is going to be a silent auction, with sealed bids. And we are studiously working, Lisa has been putting the paperwork together to have you guys take a look at to make sure you guys like that approach. So same thing there. It's got to be a situation or a policy you guys feel comfortable with.
Anybody in the public that's here tonight have anything they want to ask or input on this as we continue discussion? You can state your name, please.
Hi, I'm Matt Evans. I can't seem to get away from the city meetings anymore. I have a few notes on this here. I've bid on a few licenses in the last year. And one thing I'd like to ask, and I don't know if it's public information or not, did the Jodine's one sell? Do you know if that's public information?
The video lottery license has transferred.
Okay, that's what I thought. Is that, we talk about like active, basically. Is it being used at a facility right now?
Yes, it is.
Which, does it say the address it's attached to? Is that South Point?
That's correct.
Okay. So,
And that sale of alcoholic beverage application was done earlier this year.
okay. The two licenses that were at Finney's, are those at a different location now also?
No.
So those would be inactive technically right now?
Technically, we have not heard any
Okay.
status.
Okay.
We have,
The reason why I ask this, to put it nicely, there's collectors in the town, basically, owning 5 or 7. And I mean, that's great for business. It's just very hard to get them when the bid goes up to $350,000 or 150 or 160. I would gladly pay this city that if I could somehow do that. It's just, in my opinion, giving people like me that are looking to start up a business a chance, I guess. One of the things that was talked about in the last couple meetings, I believe it was mentioned by Dave Mingo, and Dave, stop me if I say it wrong, but we talk about getting places that generate revenue in Yankton that don't require employees, because employees right now are very hard to come by. This is one of those things that can generate revenue from outside sources such as Sioux Falls or Mitchell, or when people are vacationing here. If there's something different here, a different type of casino, then maybe they'll come in while they, come watch a movie or something like that. They come in and we can hold that money here. And I get it, it's not tax revenue, but it's revenue for us to try and keep here in Yankton, to keep building Yankton, to make Yankton, and I believe it was mentioned in the last couple meetings also, it's not just about, bringing businesses and bringing certain things here. It's about Yankton being, I don't know what the word is, prosperous. Is that the word? Like having it a wealthy community, basically. That's one of my points. The next thing is, when we compare ourselves to other towns, in my opinion, we are very much different than the other towns. We have a lot of outskirt population, which Riverside Acres and Timberland Park, which isn't really counted towards our city population. We talk about taking away. I think as far as Ben's point goes, as far as taking away the value, even if you guys give out 10 more licenses, that's not going to take away the value. Those licenses will most likely still sell for $150,000. Also, in the aspect of that, the licenses, we wouldn't be taking away from the value or the revenue necessarily, in my opinion. The people who bought these licenses a year ago, and I don't know if you have the records for this, like what the previous license was. I remember, 350 and then another one at like 150, and I think Hillcrest was 120. And then I think it drops to like 60 after that. I want to say that like Finney's, both of those were like 120 or something. They've doubled in the last year, and I don't know if you can correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa. Do you have anything on that?
We're not subject to that information.
Okay.
Unfortunately, at the city, those would be considered a private sale.
Okay, gotcha.
So we may hear something through the grapevine, but we really have nothing reported to us for that.
Gotcha. I know, like, if it was me and I came in and, bought 1 or 2 or 5, whatever it was, I wouldn't be selling them for any less than 150, let alone probably selling them at all. The next thing is we come up to the waiting list. I get it. Those people have waited for a while to get them, but the chances of somebody like me or another single person getting them versus the people who have 3, 5, 7 licenses already, they're probably going to take them because they know how much money they make, and it's not about, especially at the price that they can get them for. If they can get it for, was it $5,000 and sell it for $150K like that, or not even sell it to make sure that they have a monopoly in the town. I mean, I think we should, in my opinion, I don't like the sealed bid myself. For instance, if a sealed bid comes up and it's $175,000, I would love the chance to know that it's $175,000 and offer $5,000 more. I feel that it should go to auction, and you can even give the people on the list first right. Say, okay, like we'll bid it up to whatever amount, and say, okay, people on the list, you get first pick at this price, and if you don't want to pay that price, then it goes to the other person. I think that would be a great idea to give small people a chance to build something new in this town. Let's see here. I think that's pretty much all I had. I think it is a discussion. I appreciate how you guys have discussions. This doesn't happen normally, but I think it's great that you guys are at least willing to talk about it. Thank you.
In hearing you talk, Matt, you said sealed bids. I think earlier I said silent auction. It's like what you have at fundraisers. I didn't mean to say that. I meant sealed bids.
Nancy Winandy, 1205 Peyton Lane. I just want to be clear, I'm speaking on behalf of myself as an individual and not representing any organization. I am a former owner of a video lottery license and sold that back in 2012 along with a real estate sale of our small business. I have never been a fan of capping licenses that create an artificial value. I think the city is the one that loses out on the opportunity for the revenue as it keeps cycling because everybody, as Matt was saying, is going to pay more, going to pay more, going to pay more. I am not saying I think we should have video lottery everywhere. But I also think if you do not have a cap on the number of licenses, the free market will work itself out. I don't think it's going to generate a lot of new gamblers, and the people will have the places they want to go, and they'll patronize those, and they'll make it, and the other ones won't. So I don't think it's going to generate a whole lot more revenue, even if you have more machines, because if there's more, it's not going to encourage me or entice me to go in. Now that we have another 100 machines, okay, let's go. I just don't think the market's going to work that way with video lottery. And then I also think that
I look at your investment in a video lottery license the same as you would if you bought a building in the downtown, or when you buy your home or you buy real estate. You're making an investment. Sometimes those investments pay off and sometimes they don't. So that's a risk you take when you make an investment. But by holding that license, and I know the revenue we generated with only 3 machines in our establishment, that license has likely more than paid for itself multiple times over by the person who owns it if they've had it more than a year or two. And if they have 10 machines, that machine is likely paying off, or that license is likely paying off very quickly. So the value is not necessarily in the license, it's the revenue you're generating through having an establishment. So I think having more licenses is something that you should consider, because I do not believe that the city should make $17,000 in a year off of the licensing fees, and an individual who happens to be the lucky dog who got a license early on now makes $150,000 on one transaction. So I appreciate your taking a serious look at how this will impact businesses in Yankton and how it will overall impact our community.
All right. A couple more minutes here so that we can take a break before switching to the City Commission. Is there anybody else? Yes. Step on up. State your name, please.
Charlie Gross, 1510 Burley. The discussion 20 years ago and 25 years ago was, do we want to look like Sioux Falls, which has a casino in every bar on certain streets, and that's one of the reasons we capped it, was to avoid that sort of wild, open gambling atmosphere. You know, we have grown, so maybe there's some room, but my question to Ross would be, do we open ourselves to a lawsuit from someone that just paid $150,000 for 10 machines by raising the cap so that now there's more licenses out there and all of a sudden the value of his license drops? And I know the previous speaker said that won't happen, but because there's a waiting list. But again, would we not open ourselves up to some sort of...
I'm going to give you a hesitant, unresearched, no, I don't think so, because it's the purview of this commission to decide that cap by ordinance, which it can change at any time, and I suppose that's the risk in owning it. But that is an unresearched answer, and I would have to spend a little bit of time. If we're legitimately going to put this on the agenda, I will have researched that question.
Okay.
So
the other thing is,
caution. I don't think so, but that's a gut.
Okay. The other thing is, several of you speak softly, and it's hard to hear. Speak up.
Hey, Ross, question for you. The fee that the city would get, say that we open up some licenses, is that a statutory fee that we're bound by certain caps, or can we set whatever amount we want to be the fee? The one-time fee, and then there's the licensing annually after that.
I don't know that answer off the top of my head. I will have to look and get back to you, but I do know that we just looked at that for the new off-sale packaged liquor, and for the initial issuance, there was not a cap for that. I would assume it's the same, but again, that's a gut-based response,
Sure.
not
Well,
a
that's
research
fair.
response.
I guess my thought is, say the market is $150,000 for a license. Could the city open up a handful of licenses, and our number now going forward is $150,000 to purchase a license? And then there's a fee, annual fee after that, like you normally do, just so the market doesn't deflate for those that are already purchased, but it then also curbs the inflation on it because that is the number.
I like the idea. I'd have to look and make sure we could do that.
Oh, yep. Quickly. quickly. 'cause,
Sorry, this
yep.
is Matt Evans. I think that's a great idea. I'd put a little bit of a spin on that, and I wouldn't put a set price on it. I would just have it straight up for bid. I mean, if you guys open up 10 licenses, say they go for $100K each, and you have a one-time fee, the city makes $1 million like that. And I honestly, I don't think that's far-fetched at all.
All right, we are running out of time for this work session and want to give a chance for everybody to shuffle notes and stand up or do whatever they need to do for a couple minutes here. So my question to the commission is, do you want to, it sounds like we still have quite a bit to discuss, and there's some desire to discuss it, to figure out if we want to entertain adding more, staying where we're at. My question to you would be, do you want it in another work session, or do you want it as an actual commission item on an agenda?
I would be okay with moving this to a regular city commission agenda item.
Anybody else? Not an official vote, obviously, we're in work session.
I would
Anybody?
agree.
You agree with that? Anybody else disagree, I guess I would ask, who's going to ask? All right, so we have
Sorry, Mayor,
direction.
just to clarify, you want it on the next meeting, or you want to let it percolate a little bit? Because I think there may be some other questions come up that folks want to research, or you may have other questions that might take some time. We can do it whatever your pleasure.
Yes. I don't know if it needs to be on the agenda in 2 weeks, because I think obviously, as Ross said, there's some things he needs to look into, and this isn't a burning need right away in our community. Obviously, one I think we still want to address this year, but I do want to give Ross and his staff time, because I think to have if we're not going to do it in work session, then we'll need to really have our facts and figures in front of us as we do that. So I would probably make sure we give enough time to do that, but yet still make sure we have it done before the first of the year.
Thank you.
All right, with that, like I said, taking a quick break before the regular city commission meeting at 7, since there is no other business in front of the city commission tonight for the work session specifically, I would ask for a motion to adjourn the work session.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Anybody abstaining? All right, we are adjourned. I tried to give you 5 minutes. It's down to 3.